My ex's kids almost landed him in jail after they locked my son in the garage and left him alone, so I took his custody, and now he is furious. I, 33 female, have a 7-year-old son with my ex, 35 male. Almost a year ago, I was given full custody of our son, and my ex was awarded supervised visitation. The reason for this was the abuse our son was suffering at the hands of his father's stepchildren, 12 and 13. This was a very difficult battle to win. It started 3 years ago when my son came home from his father's house, and my ex announced he'd gotten remarried over the weekend and wanted me to pay half toward the clothes he bought our son for the wedding because they got ruined. Of course, I didn't pay half, but I did ask why he expected me to pay and why the clothes were ruined. He said he felt like we should split the cost of big items like that. Then he refused to answer how they got ruined. Later that evening, when I was bathing my son, I noticed some bruises on him, and it made me suspicious. He mentioned his arms hurt and that the big kids had done it. A few weeks later, my ex called me and asked me to come and calm our son down. He said our son was hysterical, and he had been unable to calm him. When I got to his house, our son was still crying and wanted to come home with me. My ex's wife said one of her kids had accidentally stepped on my son's foot, and my son got scared. But I could hear one of her kids in the background calling my son names and saying they wanted to shut him up. Over time, things got worse. There were more bruises and more days where my son would get very upset at his dad's house. I spoke to my ex, who said his stepkids were taking it badly that their mom had remarried and that they had lost their dad only 4 years prior, and it was difficult for them. He said he and our son weren't their favorite people, but he said it wasn't a big deal. I decided to document these incidents and injuries anyway because it appeared to me my ex was not concerned, and our son could be at risk in his home. As my son got bigger, he'd verbalize more and more about what was going on. The stepkids treated him like doo-doo and were not embarrassed or ashamed to be rough with him. He'd get pushed and grabbed, and a lot of these accidents were happening. I put in a few calls to CPS, and they started to offer resources. It pissed off my ex, but I was worried for my son. The verbal incidents weren't on CPS's radar really, but the physical stuff they also documented, and some of my ex's family had witnessed things, and a few even sent me rundowns about what happened. The incident that brought us to me getting full custody was my ex and his wife leaving the 3 kids home alone for hours together, and the stepkids dragged my son out of the house and locked him in the garage on his own, where all the dangerous tools were held. My ex tried to fight for his right to retain custody, but CPS and the judge agreed it was not safe for our son. The reason he only gets supervised visits is his stepkids are not allowed around my son. My ex's parents are celebrating their wedding anniversary next month, and they want my son there. But my ex and his family are invited and will be attending. I told them I could let them do something with him another time, but if the stepkids are there, my son won't be. They, along with my ex's oldest brother, feel like I'm being unfair and too strict and not trusting them to keep my son safe. But he wasn't in the past. I know that for a fact. Am I the butthole?